Good evening. I call this meeting to order. Grace, will you please take roll?
Alderperson Chandy Kuniger.
Here.
Alderperson Daphne Ledvina.
Here.
Alderperson Rash.
Here.
Randy Silky.
Here.
Ryan Jennings.
Here.
Melissa Thiel Collar.
Here.
Jim Kneisel.
Here.
Addison DeClean.
Here.
And Connor Goodman.
Here.
Excellent. Thank you, Grace. We have quorum. Item 2, public comment upon matters not on the agenda. Comments made during the public comment period shall pertain only to matters under the jurisdiction of the Board of Park Commissioners. Is there anyone who wishes to address us under that? Okay, moving on. Items. Number 1, consideration of possible action to approve the Board of Park Commissioners minutes from January 19th, 2023 meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Dang it. Sorry, more wait time. The motion passes. Item 2, consideration of possible action to approve WDNR grant for Bomier dock renovations.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second. Discussion? Does anybody want to ask Marty about it? Looked pretty straightforward to me. Do you want to say anything, Marty?
Not unless you got a question.
None. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 3, consideration of possible action to approve the WDNR grant for James Street dock modifications.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 4, consideration and possible action to approve amendment to Interdimensions Wellness Agreement.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 5, consideration and possible action to approve use of QuickScores.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Energetic tonight, aren't we?
We are. I think the snow. It's the snow. If there's no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries. Item 6, consideration and possible action to approve seasonal aquatics updates. Marty?
If the park board wouldn't mind, we'd request that you table this. More than likely, you're going to have some questions revolving a number of things that are on here. And our rec supervisor is stuck on a plane right now. So she was unable to she's coming back from a aquatic conference. So we were able to talk with her. There's nothing pressing that can't wait until March, so we would just request that we table it.
I'll make a motion to a table.
Go ahead.
Oh,
I'll
sorry.
second.
Any discussion on tabling?
Can't have discussion for a table.
Thank you. Any amendments to the table? I could do that.
Can't do that either.
I know.
Jeff, pass
All
it
those in
over.
favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 7, consideration and possible action to approve insurance claim for VFW pool.
Do you want us to wait on this too?
I can't, it's really what you have in front of you is really a formality. We are, due to emergency procedures, we're actually in the process of working with our insurance company. We've already received the check and replacing the frequency drives and the motors. But as a formality, if you will, we want it to go through the park board as well as council, just so that, everything's on record and we're not trying to hide anything, obviously. But if you have any questions about it, we're certainly able to answer them. But as the memo described, our maintenance staff, during the process of winterizing, an event happened where our basement was flooded. When it flooded, it submerged our frequency drives as well as our motors. That's not good. So we had to work with our insurance company to have those, insurance adjuster came in, they already made it, approved a claim on it. We're working actually for a replacement right now. We were a little bit worried. The large frequency drive had a 30-week turnaround, which that put us approximately 2 weeks after the start of pools, so that was a problem. So our aquatic consultant, Carico, did a very, very good job somehow maneuvering within the system, and our actual large frequency drive, the one we were worried about, is already in. So they'll be looking at replacing it over the next couple of weeks.
Dean?
So Marty, how did it flood? What happened?
So our insurance company is doing an investigation, but what I can tell you, the very simple answer to it is there was a valve that was not closed. There is, I don't know what the right word is, investigation right now as to why that was not closed. So while our insurance company is still investigating, I guess I probably shouldn't be speaking on that behalf. But what I can tell you, without a doubt, there was a valve that was not closed, and that caused the basement to get flooded.
Okay. I mean, it's an insurance claim, so I get that part, but.
Yep.
Okay.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion on the motion at hand?
Real quick.
Dean?
What's our deductible on insurance claims?
I believe it's $1,000.
Any other questions?
No.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item, item number 8. Approve, consideration and possible action to approve consultant for Wilson Park Master Plan. I guess I'd like to kind of start off by saying I appreciate the community feedback we've received from Mr. Anderson, and I think at least one of the communications I had, I think, seemed to have some commentary from Mr. Nix as well regarding the concept of do we really need to spend money on a consultant for Wilson Park based on what we've heard from the community already. So I appreciate that feedback and comment on that. That's helpful, I think, for our part. Marty?
If you want, I can kind of give an intro on where we're at. So a couple things. We received an email from Mr. Anderson as well as Mr. Nix, and those, I think some of you got them by email, but some of you didn't, but there is a copy that is there for everyone. And I'll come back to that. When we originally did the Wilson Park survey, at the time, the survey information that came back was very divided, very 50-50, in that essentially 50% of the respondents were in favor of a passive recreation type of park, and the other 50% were in favor of an active recreation type of park. With it being very divided at the time, I believe the position of the park board was that it's kind of above and beyond us. We should have a consultant lead us through the process of figuring out what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. So with that, we put together an RFP, and with the RFP, we did ask them to do or receive community input in some fashion. Didn't spell it out to a T, but we did allude to the fact that we wanted them to talk with stakeholders and survey our community. We received 3 bids. The copy that you have on in front of you, as well as what I have on the screen, we had a number of staff go through the bids, and we came up with a ranking. We have to try to do some quantitative measure versus just a subjective measure. So we had a number of staff. We kind of average all the scores. How it came out was that Cedar Corp ranked the highest at 17, Grafe was next at 15.5, and Rettler was at 13. I can give you a quick summary of each of the proposals that we received. Rettler Corporation had the lowest dollar amount. However, the staff that read it were not confident that the consultant had a real good understanding of what we were asking. If you looked at the consultant's proposal, they took our RFP and put it into their proposal, and they did not insert any of their own personal language as far as their understanding. I had some conversations with Rettler that kind of supported the feeling that they really didn't have a good understanding of what we were trying to accomplish. Granted, it's a very intriguing and attractive price that they offer, but from our end, we're uncomfortable that they have a good understanding of what we were asking them to do. Grafe came in with a very good proposal. The dilemma with Grafe was that they chose to veer away from the actual scope of services and propose an entirely, not entirely, but a significantly different approach than what we were asking. Probably one of the biggest things where they veer from is in our proposal, we asked them to deliver a conceptual plan, a 2D rendering and such. They are not proposing that at all. What they are proposing is a large amount of research and then the submittal of a bubble diagram. So this is, I probably should have gave you a copy of this, but on the screen, so instead of a rendering showing what the park would look like, they would supply a bubble diagram, and this is what they would submit. Not really to scale, not really definitive. Gives you a very good idea of what the park would look like and how it would flow and fit, but it's not that to-scale diagram sketch rendering that we asked for in our RFP. If you were to add the additional items that Grafe proposed, they were in the neighborhood of about $17,600 to get to all of the different things that we were asking for. Cedar Corp, moving on to Cedar Corp, we thought they had a very good proposal as well. In their proposal, it was more than the $10,000, obviously, as was Grafe's if you add everything in. But we felt Cedar Corp and Grafe had very similar proposals, and kind of the deciding factor was Cedar Corp was a little bit cheaper than Grafe. So that's how we came up with the rankings that we have. Let me just come. That's how we came up with reviewing the proposals. Now I'm going to jump back to the emails that you received. When I got the emails, I read them from Mr. Nix and Mr. Anderson, and I'll be completely honest with you. There's a very valid point that they bring up. We have already done research with the community. We have a survey that tells us what people like, what they don't like, where they're leaning. And I cannot sit here and tell you that we would hire a consultant. They will go out into the community, obtain information, and they won't come back with the same information that we already have. I can't tell you that won't happen. So they bring up a very, very good point. If I could look into the crystal ball and tell you how the consultant would come back with information, I do that. Ideally, what the hope was and so I'll jump back to our original conversation. The original conversation was, the thought process was we would hope that a consultant could come in, survey our community, and find out and dig deeper and get different information and more directive information than what we were able to extract from our community. Can't tell you that will happen. I really can't. So Mr. Nick brings up, and Mr. They bring up a great point in that it's very possible we could spend a lot of money on a consultant, and at the end of the day, they're going to come back and say, hey, 50% want a passive recreation, 50% want an active recreation, what do you want to do? That can very well happen. So it kind of leaves you in a little bit of a dilemma. And I wish I had a great answer for you because, like I said, I used up all my crystal ball chips. Do you roll the dice and go with the information that we have? Ask a consultant to take the information, do the best job they can, and come up with two options, submit to the park board, get community input, reduce down the one, and move forward? Or do you have them dive into the community and try to get more research and analysis and in hopes of finding out more information than we were able to do? There you go. So from there, I can open it up to questions for me. I think Mr. Anderson is here. I know he's very interested in the project. Go whichever direction you like to go.
Do an open?
Yeah.
I was going to say before that,
Sure.
just based on the feedback we had before, reality is we're damned if we do, damned if we don't. Because it's a coin toss, right? And we don't know if they get any different information. We don't know if they get the same information. To the point that was made by both Mr. Anderson and Mr. Nix, we've already got this up in the air type of thing. Let's just say the consultant comes back and goes, yep, I got different information. Now 55% want passive and 45% want active. Was it really worth the money spent?
Huh.
It's different, but so I have my opinion already, but I guess I'd be interested to open if I think that's where you're going to go, right?
Yeah,
So I'll make a motion to open the meeting.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. We're in open session. Mr. Anderson, if you would feel free to step up to the wonderful table. I believe we need you to state your name and address for the record.
My name is Jim Anderson. I live at 915 Memory Lane. I think everybody here will agree that public outdoor space is at a premium, particularly when it's in a small neighborhood like ours. I think we have an opportunity here to take Wilson Park, which is the oldest park in the city, by the way, and I'm sure you already know that, and make it a very inviting green space. I think you all have to do is look at Walsh Plaza or the Riverwalk. We'd kind of like to see something like that on the other side of town. So that's the only comment I have, unless you have questions for me.
Any questions? I guess before you leave the table, I've got one for Marty, and then that'll probably prompt a question to you. Marty, help me out again. Our budget is rather extensive in number of pages. How much money do we have for Wilson Park? Where are we? If we go through this process, whether it's a consultant or we move forward without that, how much money do we have to invest in Wilson Park?
Okay. You asked two different questions there.
Sorry.
What is our budget for design and development of Wilson Park? Our approved budget is $10,000. However, that comes out of the Parkland Dedication Fund, so it's easier to ask for additional money versus asking for unassigned reserves. What is the budget number for development of the park? There isn't one right now. So we do not, it's tough to budget money when we don't even have a plan yet.
We have more projects than we have money currently, correct?
Well, yeah.
I can remind everyone of our 7-year capital plan where approximately every year we get slightly less than half of our project request funded.
Okay. So, Mr. Anderson, my question to you is, if we have $10,000 that perhaps we could ask council to move from a plan, developing a plan to actual implementing $10,000 to implement something at Wilson Park. Do you think the community would be interested in that based on, what you've heard as you've sat through park board meetings and the dollar amounts you've heard for developing parks and the cost on the Riverwalk and the cost on Walsh Plaza and those things?
Well, first of all, Marty's going to hear something that I tell him regularly, and he's probably not going to be any happier tonight than he usually is. If we would start by simply cutting all the brush down along the fence on the far right side and open up the park and trim all the trees and do some kind of a regular maintenance in our park, we'd step forward a long way from what it typically looks like. And if you've been by there and you walk like I do often, you'll know what I'm talking about. Remember, there's a historical marker there that needs to be taken into consideration that's pretty valuable, I think, at least to our community. So I'm looking for some way to spend $10,000 to get a plan, and do I think everything's going to happen overnight over in Wilson Park? I know it's not going to. But at least we'll be going in the right direction.
I did walk Wilson Park last Sunday, and after reading your emails, then I'm like, I need to go take a look at this. And yeah, I concur. It's a nice wild area on the east end of the park, and I agree with that. Other questions or comments for Mr. Anderson? Shayna or Jim?
No, I'd make a motion to close if there's nobody else there.
I'll second.
All those in favor of closing the meeting, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. We're back in regular order. Thank you, Mr. Anderson, for your comments tonight.
So I
Ryan?
have a question for Marty. Is it possible to move $10,000 out of the Parkland fund over to an active fund? Is that even possible?
It probably is, but I guess the path that you're going down, I probably would not recommend. If you're suggesting that we should take $10,000 that we've allocated for helping the city design and plan the park to a construction type of fund, I would discourage you against that for a couple reasons. A, you can put money in a fund for construction, but somewhere, somehow, we have to design what's going to happen there. And I can tell you that if you are looking at trying to do it in-house, could we come up with ideas and conceptually of what it would look like? Sure. We could do that. Is that going to be what the community exactly wants? Not sure. But in some capacity, our engineering department will have to be involved. I've already talked with our engineering department about their capacity for helping us. And if we're looking for help within the next probably 6 months to a year, it's not happening. In case you're aware, the engineer department has probably more work than they can handle, and they are now 2 employees down. So trying to obtain, unless we want to put some major road projects on hold so that we can design Wilson Park, probably not going to happen.
Yep. I guess I was just trying to find out if that was even a consideration. So the
Yeah,
answer is pretty much no. And, oftentimes we get beat up, or in the past, when I was on council, we get beat up for planning to plan. So we put in a plan, we do a master plan, and then we really don't have the money, and we can't get to it for years. And I don't know if this is going to rise to the level of us suddenly funding Wilson Park. So I'm struggling with, now is the time to plan, or is now the time to do some smaller improvements to the park? I'm kind of hedging on whether we're ready to commit these resources towards doing this effort. So I guess that's where I'm a little bit at.
Connor?
It seems to me there's 2 separate issues that we're trying to tackle at once, like improving the park and maintaining it, I think this should be like two separate topics. Like one for a plan of maintaining the grass and the vines on the wall and like stuff like that, and another of like what do we want to do with the park in the future.
Thanks. Melissa and then Dean.
I guess my question, Marty, is if there isn't an approval for a consultant, what would your next steps be?
Well, I would look to ultimately, I would look to the park board of where do you want to go with this particular topic. This particular topic was driven from a number of different steps, really ultimately being triggered by St. Norbert's interest in purchasing the property. That's where this all started. At the time, it morphed into not turning it over to St. Norbert, but designing a park that will be not just trees and a swing set and a historical monument, but into something that's beneficial for the area and the surrounding neighborhood. At that time then, the next logical step was to design it. And that's what the park board recommended that we do. So we put money into the budget, it was approved, here we are.
But
So
you've surveyed the neighbors, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So you have data as to what they're looking for?
what we did is we put out a survey on our social media so that anybody could, and let me point out, the survey on social media, anybody could have filled out. Could have been someone from the east side of De Pere. But it is important for everyone to understand, while it's important for the neighborhood to have input, it's also a City of De Pere park. So the neighborhood shouldn't say solely how that park looks. That being said, in addition to the social media survey link that we put out, we did a mailer to, I don't know what the radius was, but there was a radius we drew around the park, and then we did a direct mail to that neighborhood. So we do not have a record of which address survey, but we had a going back, I don't know the number, but I do remember that it was a good turnout as far as number of responses that we received.
Is your staff comfortable relying on that data and that information? Or is that why you've gone to RFP?
Well, going back in time, we brought that survey information to the park board. At the time, what I mentioned to you was the survey information, while very good, was very, very divided in that there was no clear direction of what the community, 75% of the people didn't say, we want it to be an active recreation park with a volleyball court and swings. When we did the pool survey, we had like 70% of the people say we want diving boards. Guess what? Pretty easy to, conversation that we're going to have diving boards. But it was 50-50. So when it's 50-50, could we design something with that information? Sure, but it's basically you're throwing darts at a dartboard blind. So that's the thought process, was bringing a consultant to help sift through the information better and get to a point we could design something. This is a very, very hard topic, and I sympathize with the park board because there's lots of moving parts. Ryan brought up a great point in that we could do a really nice design for Wilson Park, but what's the likely, say we come up with a design and it's going to cost $450,000. What's the likelihood we're going to get $450,000 in the next 5 to 10 years to develop that park? It's going to be hard unless there's some type of fundraising effort. Since I've been here for 17 years, we have not developed a park renovation from scratch and put $450,000 towards it. It just hasn't happened. There's a great logical point about why do we need to go ask for additional information? Give what we have to the consultants, let them figure it out from there versus paying them to go talk to the community. But there's also the point of saying, we're not professionals when it comes to extrapolating important information from community, and that's why there are consultants out there. So I sympathize with you. There's probably 4 different ways you can go with this, and like I said, I wish I had a crystal ball and tell you which way is the best way to go.
Dean?
Yeah, so I mean, I appreciate all the comments and thoughts, and I know, Ryan, I thought you were going a different direction with your question, and I was like, okay, this makes more sense, but then I went a different direction than I thought. Because I thought you were going to say, or go to the point saying, instead of doing the consultant for the community survey off of this fee, just use the consulting fee to do the plan development based on the information that we know. But I think we're also going to know based on experience too, Marty. We know we're not going to get $450,000 for this, and we know if we set up $700,000 to build a pavilion at Voyager Park, it's coming in at 1 point whatever it is now. We know it's going to go higher, right? We can still cut out some bathrooms, Amy, but it was a good idea. So I think we've got to be realistic in the fact that maybe it's just time to look at a design that takes a small community park and makes it a balance of some sort. We're not going to get a lot of playground equipment in there because of cost. So we're not going to be able to stick in how much did we spend down at Voyager? 125,000?
Voyager?
Yeah.
Voyager was like in the neighborhood of about 350,000 all total.
Just for playground equipment and portable.
Oh, playground equipment was about 175,
Okay.
and port in place was about 175.
Okay, so yeah, so we're not going to get that at Wilson, right? Can we do we have playground equipment there of any kind, or do we have smaller type functionality there? I think that the advantage of having one of the consulting groups that comes in that does some of our parks or has done some of our parks and our properties in the past, they kind of have a feel for who we are already as a city. But I think we have to be realistic in the fact that this is a smaller urban park that we're just trying to create better character to. That if you try to make it an active, it's not an active park now. Could it be an active park? Yeah, maybe, but I don't see that. I see more of that passive type of park facility in my mind. And I know that we got a 50-50 split around the neighborhood, and I know we don't necessarily, we're not, statisticians and consultants to pull that kind of information and extract some things, but I think there's enough information there that we could have some plans and the community could look at them and vote on them that way. So I'm almost thinking in my mind, it's skipping that whole consultancy process of grabbing feedback, just going right into some plan designs for small budget, small park, and see what we go from there. I think we might be further ahead, but that's just my opinion at this point. But at least that way we're not taking money and throwing it into construction right away, because we are developing some kind of plans based on what we do know right now.
Amy?
The impetus of the whole discussion was off of interest to purchase. And that's what, revitalized a whole conversation for a park that has been quiet for a very long time, right? So it sounds, to Connor's point, that the idea of just maintaining, clearing out, and that's what I heard as well, like maintaining green space, having public open space is enough for right now. That we just as a city say, yep, this is important space that we preserve, and we can be good with that right now even. Because even looking at the prioritization, when we think of it as a board, you have to deprioritize the replacement of other things that are actively used, that we know. That's why this is the situation that the idea of it being purchased was even entertained, right? So maintaining it is or keeping it as a park, in my mind, is a big win in and of itself. And that we can do some things within our budget constraints to encourage greater line of sight, greater maintenance, that will be good for right now. So I don't know what I just proposed, but I like it.
But I think you and I are on the same page here. It's like, don't spend a lot of money on building something that might not get used, but just take what we have and maybe design something that's going to be a nice fit in the community. So I think we're in the same ballpark here.
Jim or Shayna, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, we're both raising our hands. We've been raising our hands for a while.
So I apologize.
Don't you see us on the screen?
Marty has me on the wrong screen. I'm going to blame Marty on that one.
Oh, that's okay.
Oh, there we go. Now
I'll
I can
let
see
them
you
go
guys.
first.
Now I see you.
Okay. Thanks, Shayna. I won't take long. I agree. I don't think we really need the community survey aspect anymore, but I think we do need their expert opinions on what to do with kind of the dynamic here with the urban park and next to the college and the apartments and maybe even the older people living in the assisted living and elderly housing, to come up with some simple ideas that would make that good green space. Like you want to eliminate tripping hazards and maybe you want to have tables for, people to be able to relax and congregate. But I think the money is well spent with one of these firms in the design and expertise area. I wouldn't throw that out and just say, Marty, put a path wherever you want and mow the lawn. I still think we need some help and some direction, and maybe even something that could be done in stages, that we could do something small every few years and lead up to something a little bit nicer. But I wouldn't throw out the idea of hiring one of the consultants. I just would maybe have them focus more on providing their expert opinions and more on the design end than on doing the surveys.
Hey, Jim, I do like your idea of having Marty mow the grass, so I thought that was spot on.
Shayna.
I would just have a quick question for Marty. So if the RFP that went out was requesting that the consultant go out to the community and get more information, would we have to go back and put out another RFP for this smaller project?
What I think I would do, or what I would recommend, is that I go back to the 3 consultants that submitted a bid and proposed a revised scope of services. And I think I would have to do a good job of bullet pointing out exactly what we're offering, or what we're asking. What I'm gathering is that we want a very, very condensed version of the RFP. We want them to, A, look at our data, B, give us 2 general mock-ups of what the park could look like and submit that to the park board, let them beat it up and condense it down to 1. In a very, very basic form. Obviously, I have to put more bullet points to it, but I do think I would have to go back to them. I don't think we have to do a complete RFP, if that's what you're asking. I do think I can go back to them and have them resubmit based on a revised scope of services.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, that was what I was asking. And then could you tell me what the costs were? Just because I couldn't see it on the screen for Grace and Cedar Core.
Yeah, where is my sheet?
Gray Fallen was a little.
So Cedar Corp had a base bid of $14,900, and then they also proposed an additional $2,200 for a public information meeting. Grafe, their base bid was $10,600, but as I had mentioned earlier, that was a revised. They revised our scope of services. In addition to the, in addition to the $10,600, they proposed a $5,000 cost for, where is it? They proposed a $5,000 cost on top of the $10,600 for a black and white rendering and site plan. They proposed $2,000 for developing a cost opinion, and then an additional $3,000 for a public presentation / community input session.
Thank you.
Marty, can I ask one more question?
Go right ahead, Jim.
Hello, thank you. I guess it's more of a suggestion. I think maybe it would be nice to, as part of this, don't do a survey, but at least talk to someone at St. Norbert, perhaps, to get ideas on what sort of passive elements they might appreciate for their students.
Go ahead, Marty.
Jim, I appreciate that. I would caution us in utilizing St. Norbert as the only stakeholder. We do have to remember that while St. Norbert is going to benefit from a developed park, no question, but there are other community members, residents, and people that utilize the park that their input is just as valuable as St. Norbert. So I personally would be very uncomfortable in just trying to work with St. Norbert in developing a concept for a park. I hope that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Other questions for Marty? Go ahead,
What,
Marty.
I don't want to beat it, I won't say that. But Jim, just to follow up with that, keep this in mind too. We have talked with St. Norbert, and when we did the survey, they actually filled out that survey. So indirectly, we do have their information.
Okay, that's good to hear. That's fine. Thanks.
I'll entertain a motion.
I would make a motion at this time to, I figure out the wording here. I'll make a motion to, ooh, Marty, you made this tough now.
Do you want to refer back to staff with the reduced scope? Is
That's
that what
why my question is, we got to refer this back to you or approve the dollar amount for one or the, because we don't know a dollar amount if they revise it.
Right.
So do we have to refer back for
Condensing the
changing the scope,
scope
or
of
can we?
services?
I believe,
I'm thinking
this is where it would be really cool to have one of our attorneys here.
we only have one right now, but
No, we have two.
we do have two.
We do have two.
Oh.
We do have two. Yeah, Tony has been here for 2 weeks, and Eric is the assistant, so yeah, we have two here now.
All right.
I would probably suggest that it gets referred
Back to staff.
back to staff with the intent to do a revised scope of services with our consultants.
Yeah, that's the motion I was going to make, but yeah,
I'll
I,
second that.
that's what I thought you were going to say.
that's where I was going with it.
Sure.
But-
So we're, Dean's motion, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, is
Marty
to
will.
refer this issue back to staff with a revised, asking Marty to have a revised scope of services to reflect the discussions we had here this evening.
Grace, is that right?
I had nothing, so is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
So Randy, just for discussion, question,
Sure.
comment. When I do the revised scope of service, there is a cost implication. When we ask them, if our intent is to have them do 2 sample concepts, there is a definite cost implication of what type of document we would like to see. So if we are asking for them to put together a 2-scale rendering and 3D rendering, that cost is much different than that bubble diagram that Grafe had proposed. So there's a significant difference in costs. If I went to them and say, we want you to do 2 renderings, but in a bubble diagram concept, then we condense it down to 1 and then we put something to scale. I think you'll see a much better cost that way.
Does the bubble diagram help you in any way? Like,
What I'm trying to do is get to the end result, and that's one plan that we all agree on, but not have a ridiculous amount of cost to get there. So,
Well, I guess, Marty, I'd say, because I made the motion, as looking at that, I think I'd have to understand what the cost difference is between the two before I can make that decision. I mean, if we're talking, $10,000 for the 2D, 3D, and then the bubble diagram is $1,000, I guess obviously it'd be easy to say that way, but if it's $7,500 and $8,500, I could go either way at that point. So I guess I'm okay either way with that one, but I guess I need to know what that cost is. Because we can still make that judgment call at the time we approve whatever they come through, so they can give us their options. Obviously, the bubble diagram, or is it bubble diagram is what they call it?
bubble diagram.
Yeah.
That's the terminology that Grafe used.
So this might be less money, but I think from my side of it, conceptually to move it along quicker, the bubble diagram is probably not going to do as much for me visually as the other
Okay.
renderings would be. So
agree.
I guess I made it as clear as mud after that. But
Brian? But the
But the bubble diagram still gives us a working plan, and then from that bubble diagram, we can say, okay, we're going to improve this portion of the park, so that we can, because it sounds like we're looking at a long-term, long plan for this park. We're not just going to turnkey, bam, Wilson Park is 100%. It's going to be, here's your master plan, and is it enough information for us to put that out for proposal for, if there's going to be a little playground on there, we can get a proposal for a playground that fits into the puzzle, and there's going to be a little walking nature path or something in there with native plants or something, and we're able to bid that out. Are we going to have enough information to put these little pieces out?
A bubble diagram is a very, very remedial picture.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't tell you how things are going to fit and flow perfectly. It's not going to tell you exactly, what a playground is going to look like, or what a walking trail is going to look like, or even if a walking trail can work based on elevations. A bubble diagram is nothing more than, a third grade coloring book sketch.
Yeah.
But
rendering.
and you're paying for the information to put the puzzle together, essentially. But it's important. So a bubble diagram, I don't think is going to give you that information of how everything's going to fit perfectly.
Dean?
So real quick, I guess talking about this bubble diagram, my first question for you is, have you ever seen one before, come across in a plan?
I've seen them, but we've never worked with them much. We've always asked for
I've never seen one in my time on council or park board. I don't know if Jim or Ryan have ever seen them come through that way before either. So I think that's probably out.
And yeah, the only, I'm just giving you a theory here.
Yeah.
But like us and every other business known to man, they're struggling for employees. And I do know the engineering world is struggling mightily for staff. Very possible this is a creative way of
Saving time and
reducing work time on something to get to an end result.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too, as I'm kind of commented to Amy here a little bit, we don't really have a dollar amount we're asking to look at either. So if we're going to look at some plan ideas and plan designs, we got to have some sort of budget in mind of what we're willing to spend on this, because again, we could spend $450,000 or we could spend $50,000. What is it that we want to spend that they can go after for design strategy? Because if we don't give them a guide, they're going to come in with whatever they think can work, and they're going to have a dollar amount that could be just astronomical and not going to work for us. And I guess at this point, I would suggest that they not go over anything that could be valued at more than $80,000. And I'm just throwing a number out that came out of my mouth. My brain was actually saying something else. So, if anybody else has any other ideas, but I don't think that we can ask them to start putting together plans without any kind of structure to it. But we have to give them some kind of guidance of what they might be able to do and not do. And we know that Marty's already going to mow the grass, so that we don't have to worry about from a cost standpoint.
Did I mention we're going to do a lot of concrete there?
No, we're not. That's a lot more expensive than $80,000 together.
Well, you've just lent credence to Ryan's native plants that don't need cutting.
Yes, that works too.
I agree with Dean that we need to probably give the consultants some kind of a dollar amount, because otherwise, it goes way out of whack and everybody looks at it and says, that's nice, but this isn't going to happen.
So do we need that in the motion, or do you just want that as guidance?
I can take it I can implement it as guidance.
And the number I threw out, I don't know what anybody else is thinking either, but just.
Yeah, when I do the revised scope, well, ultimately too, keep this in mind, I'll need to bring it back to you.
Right.
Here. So when we start working with the consultant, we tell them what we want. So ultimately, that's out in the future, but we can simply tell them, we need a very cost-effective design, and what does cost effective mean? That's maybe a discussion we can have at the next month's meeting.
Sure.
Brian?
Just a little side commentary. I'm definitely, I guess I'm personally in favor of proceeding with a consultant. And part of it isn't because it was 50-50. It was 50% categories passive, 50% categories active. Like, there was really no consensus among the two sides. It's not like, everybody said pickleball court and everybody else said, the native plant garden. It was just, and that's what leads credence in the back of my mind towards spending money on a consultant to bring all of that noise into something cohesive. So I'm not against the consultant for that reason, just because I remember it being a lot more scattered than just passive and active.
Further discussion? All right, all those in favor of referring back to staff, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Welcome.
We hope, I hope we've done due diligence tonight.
I knew it was not going to be easy.
Well, we look forward to hearing from you again as we move forward in the process. And others. All right, next item. Consideration possible action on furniture in the Nelson Pavilion. Marty, do you need a break, or are you ready to just roll right into all this good stuff?
Well, I do believe the next topic falls under Paula's realm. So while I'm putting my notes down from the last discussion, I'm sure she can take things over.
Paul, I have my questions.
Paul, is there anything you want to start us off with?
Well, I just must say I wasn't included in this project, so.
You are now.
I don't have- Yeah.
I believe you were
guess
just
I'm
delegated as the
on
leader.
the hot seat right now.
So
I'm just
What do you
kidding.
say?
I figured.
I could.
So, all right, as far as the Nelson furniture goes, did you think I was really?
No.
Sorry. As far as the Nelson furniture goes, we have in our budget estimate from our consultant, we have an allotment of $27,000. Now we can do select the type of furniture we want for that amount, or we get what we want and whatever the price is, it is. I don't suggest that. So I suggest that we try to find furniture and equipment that falls within our budget amount that fits the theme and feel of the facility. So Grace and I did a number of research and found different samples and put dollar numbers to it. Now, keep this in mind, is this the exact number that we would end up with? Maybe, maybe not, simply because we're just guessing. So we would put it in the specs for a certain dollar amount for a certain type of table, and maybe we get 8 instead of 7, whatever. But it's going to be close to what we're projecting. So if you look at the different samples that we had, we kind of put a bullet point list together. Our opinion is we want to stay away from certain types of furniture. Want to stay away from powder-coated steel. We've had some. When it gets vandalized, it's very hard to fix. When someone carves into it, you just can't fix it. We don't want to go with aluminum. It's very, very light. When something's very, very light, it gets carried all over the place. And I can almost guarantee you it will end up in the Fox River. So we don't want to do that. We don't want to do permanent. If we do permanent, as I mentioned, it takes away from the flexibility of that patio. So, and then we didn't want to go with rectangle. Maybe other people would have a different opinion, but to our eyes, rectangle just didn't have the same feel as the octagon, round, or square. So we came up with different options for recycled material, which is very, very heavy. So can it be picked up and moved? Yes, it can. But it's a heck of a lot harder to do than aluminum or even steel. And when it gets vandalized, it's a lot easier. If someone carves into it, we can sand it down, and then you never see it. You can only do that so many times, obviously, but it's a little easier for us to maintain vandalism-wise. So that's why we're looking to go with that. We gave a number of, you'll see 3 different options in there that are very similar: octagon, square, and round. And then there's a very fancy option. With the fancy option, if you look at the price, we're not going to get as much bang for the buck if we want to stay at that 27,000 allotment. So we tried to put it as simple as we could.
Which one's the fancy one?
Different options.
Four's the fancy.
Why don't I see that
Four.
one?
3.
Letter C.
Oh, jeez. Why did I say that out loud?
So ultimately, you can go whichever direction you want. But what we would suggest is you just pick one of the options and make life easy for yourself.
So there's a whole another set of options. When you look at it in the whole
Oh,
pamphlet, it
yeah,
just
no, I did not do
flows,
that.
but in.
Oh, number one. I thought you had a question. Sorry.
Hello.
Hey, go
Hold
right
on.
ahead.
May I speak?
Please do.
Well, naturally, I was immediately drawn to the most expensive option, option 4. It's in my blood.
As was I,
Um,
Shayna, as
Shocking.
was I.
to be drawn to the one that costs the most. But I do, I love that
It's
one.
like McDonald's.
But cost-wise, I really like option 2. I feel like option 2 would go best with the design of the pavilion, but that's just my opinion. Just want to throw it out there.
I think I think option 2 is similar to option 4 in the aesthetic, but the price is better.
Maddie.
I do agree. Number 2, like option 2, does go along very well with the modern look that the pavilion will hold, but I also think 4 could go along with that as well. I just think the looks of the wood, and I feel like that would match with the outside of the pavilion, if that makes sense. The wood we picked out last time, so.
Dean.
I like option 1, not just to be different.
Sort of, Connor.
See?
Yeah.
But what I like about option 1 versus 2, and honestly, I didn't realize option 4 didn't really appeal to me at all. But what I liked about option 1 versus 3, I like the color better. I like the octagon setting, so it creates more of a community involvement getting around it. I will also tell you on those square tables, for people who are a little bit taller, they can be a little bit more of a struggle to slide into, especially when there's other people sitting on the bench. We're talking like that 6-foot plus range even. But I like the octagon side of it, where you're actually kind of creating more of a little bit of community around that table versus just the square side of it.
Connor.
I concur. I think octagons are so much better. I think squares look honestly kind of ugly and like
Square.
overdone, yeah.
Keep
Squares are so out.
They're so yesterday.
Oh my
in
god.
mind that the tables can come in a multiple range of colors. So,
Don't get married to that.
well, yeah, I mean, look
I
at
could
more
get
at
rainbows.
at the shape, of the table versus the color, because you can get like the square in wood look,
Yeah, so option 1, 2, and 3, as far as the picnic tables go, you can get those virtually in the same color. So I mean, if you like the tan in option 1, we can get that color for option 3. The manufacturers are all very similar.
I don't really see the difference between option 3 and option 1. That's
Round
why.
round
Or 2,
tables. Those
sorry.
first two
Or
are
2.
rounds.
Oh,
Which
Oh, they're round versus.
sometimes some of us don't like sharp edges because we're not real graceful. So the round is a little easier to
I just know
navigate.
how many
not-
times you've learned that lesson.
so is option 1 round?
Option 1 is the
Okay,
hexagon and
so
the
3
octagon.
is, okay.
3 is the round.
3 is round.
Because there is a octagonal
Yeah,
style.
the handicap is a hexagon shape.
Yes, for both.
yeah.
I kind of like the round.
Now that I know the color thing, I prefer the round versus the hex and the octagon,
Round.
but-
I think round does look a little bit better.
Because square is so yesterday.
I know, the more I look at the round, the less I like the square, if I'm being honest.
Jim,
What are you thinking, Jim?
I'm with Shana. I like 2, but I don't really feel strongly about it. I don't like the hexagon. I like the round or the square.
I can go with
But
round.
either would be fine.
Can someone explain to me, I don't know if I missed this in discussion, I'm looking at option 1, there's the hexagon and then, no, wait, where am I?
There's the octagon and
Where's the round? Oh, the round is in option 3?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But then
Shana,
the
we're-
6-person plus handicap would be the hexagon on
Yeah.
option 3.
where we confused everybody is on option 3, it's intended to be round tables, but we could not find a picture of a handicap round table. So we wanted to put something in there.
Gotcha.
But yeah, if you look at the top 2, those are round tabletops. The handicap, I believe, would be round. It's just we couldn't find a picture.
Got it. Then if we're not going towards option 2, then my second choice would be 3.
I like 3.
I like 3.
I like 3 as well.
You like 5?
No.
Please.
I'm thinking more about like the movability of the benches and all of that kind of stuff. Is there any, I know you said you don't want it to like be permanent, but is there any of these options that like can click in to encourage it to stay put, make it a little less likely to have things happen? Is that not an option with any of these?
There is not a system that we could buy.
Because I
But-
can totally see in the winter you want to pull the stuff in for making
yes.
it last longer, and
Could we try to? I'd want to talk with our maintenance, but I mean, could we possibly screw on an L bracket to one of the legs and then have a concrete anchor that we can screw into? Maybe. But
I wouldn't want to MacGyver it, but
yeah, 'cause there's nothing on any of the tables
Okay.
that have a system in place like that.
Okay.
We'd have to MacGyver it.
yeah.
Brian.
The usage of the tables, I guess when I looked at this, I was assuming the 5-piece high top tables and the table and chair sets, those would be like stored and pulled out for events, whereas the larger pieces, the
Correct.
hard to throw in the river pieces, stay out.
The bigger picnic tables stay out on the patio. The bar tables and stools would be inside and stored, and then obviously the banquet tables and chairs would be in our storage room.
Okay, that makes sense.
So I make a motion to go with option number 3, colors to be decided later.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Oh, sorry, Grace.
Do they need an actual color, Marty, for the tables for the?
No, because what we would end up doing is speccing the make and model and then color to be determined. I'm assuming, though, I'm just guessing, we want something close to that tan that we're depicting.
Yeah, something I think Maddie, I like what Maddie said earlier where she said, like, let's match it up with the exterior of the building to the best of our ability.
And I'm okay letting
Makes-
Maddie decide that because I don't really do colors very well
Yeah, me either.
for matching.
There we go.
So,
We better act fast on this because she's out in a few months.
oh yeah, we'll have
Yeah.
it done before then.
Unfortunately, yeah.
I think. Oh, please. Right, Marty?
Melissa second?
Melissa seconded. All right, Shana, did you have something else to add or not? You good?
No, I'm good, thanks.
You're welcome. Jim, you're good?
I'm good.
Now that I can see you guys on the screen, I'm feeling a little better. Sorry. All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries. All right. I believe we are now up to staff updates. Update on amended agreement with MultiMedia Channels LLC for brochure advertising. This is probably Paula.
This is me. We were notified by multimedia channels that our current, well, our expired agreement with them was no longer cost effective with the model that we had in place. So we amended our agreement with them for another year. And basically the changes that are occurring is that they will still be able to solicit advertisements inside the brochure and then retain that money to pay for the cost of the printing and designing of it. But we will no longer be mailing out our brochure to all the households in De Pere. That was a very costly endeavor with that, and it is cities, based upon city administration too, we're moving towards more not mailing out things and stuff, being more utilizing social media and that. So we're coordinating with them to have drop points within the city of De Pere as far as having extra brochures out. It'll be at all the city buildings, the library, we'll have some at the schools and that. And then we'll do email blasts as well as Facebook posts and different things. So we're just gonna try that for a year and see how that goes.
I know it's discussion only, but what's our cost for mailing, or what was it before?
The mailing of them,
Yeah.
I believe that was, oh gosh, it was probably over $2,000.
Okay.
I'd have to look because it's been such a long time since the city actually paid for the cost of the mailing. They took care of everything. So,
You just find out. I'm curious.
yeah, I can.
Thanks, Paula.
All right.
Let's give it a try. Staff updates, Marty, 2022 donations.
So every year we give you a summary of donations. This year, happy to report a really impressive number of donations in kind. So, I mean, what we have on record, so, the form you have is a little over 218,000. Keep in mind, this does not include the Nelson Pavilion fundraising that our department is also heavily involved with. And then, Grace, you said there was one other thing. Wasn't there one other?
Jerry's Tree Memorial?
The which one?
Jerry's?
Oh, Jerry Hasenberg Memorial Tree Fund, which it does not include. So I have to, give my couple seconds to thank my staff. Over $200,000 of money and in-kind services was brought to our community to help our community and improve the quality of life. That does not happen without the relationships that my staff form with our community. So I cannot thank, all of the staff at my department for being connected the way they are and bringing in this type of money. Ultimately, it's about benefiting the community and improving our quality of life. And I'm just very thankful for the donations for all the people that are out there, but I'm also thankful for our staff that have forged those relationships. So, very impressive number.
Thanks, Marty. Next staff update regarding Nelson Pavilion.
So, two things. I put the little timeline on there for you, the most recent timeline. Probably the biggest thing is starting next week. Staff will be going through, you call it quality control, with the plans, and then the following week it'll be going out for bid. All goes well, knock on wood. Probably one of the biggest things in addition to the timeline, also wanted to mention to you at the last meeting, there was the discussion about the beams running through the multi-purpose room, and then what that cost would be. Long story short, we didn't bring it back here because it was found out that it would actually be a higher cost if we did not run the beams through the multi-purpose room, structurally speaking. So the beams are going to be in there, based on a structural standpoint. So that's all I got.
Here we go. All right, I think I need to ask, are there any future agenda items? If not, a motion to adjourn, I believe, is in order.
So moved.
So moved.
Thanks. Shayna moved it.
Second?
No, Shayna moved it. Melissa seconded. We're good. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. We're
So
adjourned.
close to the last one.
Thank you. Goodbye.